Greetings, everyone. This is Sister Crystal here with Let's Talk Classic Hip Hop. And I'm coming to you today with my little 2.5 cents on the Leandria Johnson rant. Last week, as you all may know, um, gospel singer, I think she's also a preacher or a minister, or she was ministering. She made a video on social media pretty much showing her frustration, if you will, with the church and the politics of the church. She also used some what I'd like to call colorful language. I think she dropped a couple of F bombs in there, and a lot of people per, predominantly those in the church, had a concern about her delivery and the way she was presenting her frustrations with the church. But my thought is, and I did see the entire video, and if you haven't, you can just put in, I have her name in the title of this video. Just put in her name and it will come up, the video with her just going on a rant. I wouldn't say rant, but just sharing her hurt. And I would say, to me, it seemed like it was church hurt, for lack of a better way to put it. And I can say from my own experience, there is no hurt like church hurt. And what I mean by church hurt is, it's when you are hurt by the saints or what have you in the church. Not to say that they're any different from other people who are not in the church, and that's the things I wanted to point out. As you know, now this is in my channel. I focus on hip hop and R&B, but I do consider young people like Leandria. I think she's 35 years old. I consider her and others, as and myself too, a part of what's called the hip hop generation. And the hip hop generation is basically people who were born after 1968, at the end of the civil rights movement. And the when you hear the word civil rights movement, most the image that comes to mind are police sicking dogs on people, um, blacks, mainly black people, descendants of slaves having water hoses turned on them. And you also see a young man by the name of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which he is considered really the face of the civil rights movement. And unfortunately, after his assassination on April 4th, 1968, if you look in the history books, the civil rights movement died with him. And that was all by design. Now, I did go off on a little tangent. I'm going to tie it into what Leandria Johnson, what she was talking about in her video. And one of the things she pointed out in her video was that, in a way, she's pointing out some of the hypocrisies in the church. And one of them was that they don't talk about how, that she cussed. And she's one of the ones that openly say she cuss, she drinks. I mean, she's just a regular person. And a lot of people in church are regular people. The issue is when they don't acknowledge that, we all are in this world. They say, you can be in the world, but not of the world. But what Leandria has done, in my opinion, is she has really exposed things that the church are not addressing. And I also feel that she's exposing some of the reasons why, in my opinion, the church is dying. The church is dying as it is currently. But if we would embrace people like Leandria and people that are and I don't want to say other people in the church are not real, but someone like her, she should be embraced and not shunned for her beliefs. I've always been of the mindset that church is where broken souls go to get healed. But how can you get healed when every time you admit to a weakness, such as maybe drinking and cussing and sex outside of marriage, all of these are considered sins, from my understanding, in the church and in the Bibles or whatever religious doctrine that you in. One of the things, some of the common themes in a lot of religion is, you know, they discourage sex outside of marriage, outside of wedlock, and mainly because of the risk of having children out of wedlock and broken homes and all of that. But Leandria, from what I know of her, and I'm okay. So I'm going to give a brief backstory because I honestly, I really didn't know a lot about this young lady other than the fact that she was a contestant on a show called Sunday's Best. And it was like the gospel version of American Idol. And I did watch several seasons of it when it first came out. And Leandria Johnson is season 3 winner of Sunday's Best. This was back in 2010. But her backstory, real quick, is right before she auditioned for Sunday's Best, she had just lost her home to foreclosure. And from my understanding, she's twice divorced and has, I think as of now, she has 4 children. From what I found, information that I was able to find, she right now she has 4 children. Back then she didn't. She was just recently divorced for the second time, and it was a last minute thing for her to go and audition for the show. And from what I've read, she was almost not chosen to be a contestant on the show because of her appearance. So she had on some flip-flops and socks and just was really dressed down, which, you know, come as you are is what they say. You know, come as you are. She came as she was. She has a beautiful voice. I have heard a couple of her songs. She is also a Grammy Award winner. I forgot for what song, but she's a Grammy Award winner and everything. So she went on this show, Sunday's Best, and from there she's managed to try to make a name for herself. And also, from my understanding, she was a pastor for a brief period of time at a church, and I believe she decided to step down because of a lot of personal issues and all that. And I could say I commend her for stepping down, because there are a lot of other preachers out there, evangelists, ministers, or whatever you want to call them, that they need to step down too, but they're not. But those same ones would point a finger at someone like Leandria, and just for her delivery. She said all that to say, hey, the church has some issues and they need to address the issues in a nutshell. But I'm hearing a lot of, well, it's not what she said, it's how she said it. But I'm thinking like, well, how could she had reworded her words differently? Now she could say, well, the church is fine, but they can use a little help in reaching out to those who aren't really saved yet. And I can't imagine another way she could have put it out there. I think it worked because we're out here talking about it, and it brought up a much needed discussion on the church, and you know how does the church go about reaching out to those that's not in the church? You know, I think part of the issue is a lot of church people in the church, they just preach to the choir, so to speak. They preach to those that's already of that mindset, and they don't work hard enough to reach out to those that may have a different point of view. you know Now, I'm kind of getting off the subject here, but other religions like the Jehovah Witnesses, they get out there, they knock on doors, they have their little what you call that, awakening or watchtower, whatever you call that, magazine. And Jehovah Witnesses, they're a bunch of gangsters. They'll run up on you. I'll tell a quick funny story, and it is funny. I had come out, I had parked in the parking lot at a grocery store. I pulled up and I didn't see anybody around me. So I try to be mindful of my surroundings. So I get out of my car. I go inside the store. I don't think I was in the store longer than maybe about 5 or 10 minutes. I come back to my car, and it was this older lady, and she happened to be Caucasian, and she just came out of nowhere with a watchtower like, here. I'm looking like, whoa, where did you come from? And I'm like, where in the heck you come from? So, I took the watchtower. I talked to her for a second, and she had the contact information on the back if I wanted to get more one-on-one and study. And I thanked the lady, and I went on about my way. So when I drove off, I saw her go back to a car. So they actually was parked in the parking lot, and they staking people out. I'm like, whoa, that's gangster. I'm glad it was a little Jehovah Witness woman and not somebody trying to rob me, because I've been all messed up. But anyway, my point is, I see the church today, and I'm not being critical. I'm just giving an observation, okay? Because I came up in the church. I would say 90% of blacks, descendants of slaves like I am, or descendants of people who were enslaved, 90% of us have come up in the church. I personally came up in the church. In fact, a short little story about me. I was in the church. You had the grandmother that even if you were sick, if you didn't go to church, you didn't go outside and play. You didn't have no fun. You didn't do any of that. You had to go to church. Church was really long. Church was boring. I wanted to go to sleep. And this was before they really had, they had children's church, but I think by the time I was a little older, maybe about 8 or 9, I wasn't in children's church anymore. I was in the regular church, and it was just so boring. And I had to sit there and pretend like I was really listening. And I guess I was forgiven for being a child, and I had to go through it. But still, the lessons that they were teaching, it really kind of went over my head, because I wasn't experiencing some of the things that the preacher was talking about. But anyway, I said all that to say it's important for the church to recognize what's going on in the world and work that into church. Recognize that while you would prefer, it's preferred that people get married and then have children, a lot of times that doesn't happen. So when it does happen that someone ends up pregnant, how do you talk to that person? How do you give them hope, and don't treat them like, it's the worst thing in the world and set them down? And with what Leandria said, according to her, she was told by some people in the church to have an abortion when she came up pregnant the 4th time, and this time she was not married. So my understanding is her other children, she was married when she had them, but the last child, she wasn't married, and it was suggested, from what I allegedly, suggested that she have an abortion. And she just told him, like, get out of my face. No, I'm not going to abort my child. And it's really hurtful to even have people that would even, fix their mouths to say something like that. The main thing is, Leandria represents the hip hop generation, the generation that have seen their relatives, their ancestors be discriminated against for jobs and opportunity and everything else. And now we're out here struggling. And we go to church and we see a pastor and a first lady that maybe they're dressing great, they're driving a nice car, they have a big house, and yet the people in the congregation is barely making ends meet. They're barely able to pay their rent. They're barely able to afford their home if they're in a home. And Leandra, she also addressed that. She says, "Well, how is it that you have a pastor and first lady living good and the congregation is struggling?" And she went on to say that church is like a business, and maybe but it's more, I guess, like nonprofit, because my understanding is churches are they're not allowed to endorse like candidates and stuff because they're under some sort of nonprofit status. But with that said, that means that they don't have to pay taxes on the money that they receive. So I can see how she would say it's a business, and I'm quite sure she would know because at one point she was a pastor. But that has always bothered me too, because I feel like while they're telling you to pay your tithes and you're going to get a blessing and all that, I'm not sure where it says in the Bible that you pay your tithes and you'll get blessed. Like, when is my blessing coming? I'm paying my tithes, but okay, where's the blessing? It's almost like you're just paying for the preacher to tell you you're going to get a blessing, but you don't see it. I don't know, but I think the gig is up, and the people in the hip hop generation, we are the ones, I'm a little older. You have people that's younger. They're the ones that's going to have to really address it head on and have a church that's welcoming of someone like a Leandria Johnson. There's another video out there of a young lady, I think it was about 6 months ago, that she was doing a testimony, and her testimony was too real, honey, because she started I know at the beginning part where she was talking about Jesus, I believe, or the Lord, I couldn't really understand what she was saying. But honey, when she started talking about sex and how she used to, how did she put it? Have sex in her mouth. Oh my goodness. She said she used to fornicate and have sex in her mouth, and she's backsliding. As soon as she said that, that was clear. And you can hear, and it's also online too. Just put woman gives inappropriate testimony in church. Honey, once she said that, she was saying, I had oral sex in my mouth. In my mouth. Once she said that, you can hear in the background a lady goes like, woo! I'm like, honey, I know that's right. I'm going to tell you something. You have not ministered to someone until you have gotten kicked out of the church. Okay? Unless you've been kicked out of the church at least once, you have not ministered to anyone. You just repeating the same old safe stuff that they say every Sunday. But like someone like Leandria, and she's getting some backlash now from her statements. I still haven't seen anybody point out what she said was wrong, but from my understanding, she was supposed to perform at the Essence Awards, Essence Festival that happened last weekend. And after her video went viral, she was uninvited to the Essence Fest. And I really wish they had not uninvited her. I wish they had allowed her to come on and at least tell her like, hey, we can't have you cussing, but just share your testimony, share your story. There are millions of other people who feel the same way that Leandria feels. Leandria isn't the only one who feels the way she feels about the church. And and it's a heartbreaking thing because the church was outside of when we were first released from chattel slavery, back in the 1800s, 1863. The church became a sanctuary for us to go. We learned, we learned about different things that was going on. And we had more pastors like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. back then. But after assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I believe it scared a lot of preachers into not getting into, I wouldn't say he got into politics, but really made them more docile, if you will, for lack of a better way to put it. And now we're in the position today where if you go into many of these churches, it's mostly small children and old women. Now, you may have a few men in there, but young kids, and when I say older women, I would say 55 and up. Once you then raised your children and been out there in the world, now you're tired, now you're coming to church, now you're coming to Jesus. You got your come to Jesus moment. But the people in between, I say between ages 18 and maybe early 50s, they are not in the church. Just take, and I'm talking about mostly our Black African American churches. Go to any church and just kind of look and kind of survey the people that you see in there. It's telling you something when you can barely find somebody, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s in the church, but you see a lot of these older and elderly people in the church. The church is dying, and we need people like Leandria Johnson and that lady with her inappropriate testimony. We need to embrace those people because they're administering to us what's really going on. They're not caught up in the church bubble. We need to get out of the church bubble and address what's really happening in the world. But just to wrap it up, I support Leandria Johnson. Maybe her delivery was a little rough, off the cuff, and all of that stuff, but it's needed. And I just can't imagine her saying it any other way and getting the attention that it needs. Yeah, and embrace her. You don't kick those people out. That's what the church is for. Church is supposed to be for broken souls. So if you want to help broken souls, open your arms and your heart to a Leandra Johnson. Open your heart and your arms to people. Maybe they're not dressed right. You shouldn't feel like you have to have a 3-piece suit and the baddest church dress and hat to go to church. Okay, if you don't have those clothes, and unfortunately it's some people in the church that feel like, well, if you don't want to dress up for Jesus, then you don't need to come. I've actually had people say that. They don't believe in the come as you are, because they believe if you come in jeans and a t-shirt that you don't respect Jesus because you're not trying to dress up really nice. So anyway, I'm going into something else, but the main thing is, Leandria represents the hip hop generation. The hip hop generation should be embraced in church. They have to be, if the church wants to grow and stop dying. We need more young people and middle-aged people. We need more men in the church, real men in the church. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was a man. He was a real man. We need more of them in the church. So this has been Sister Crystal with Let's Talk Classic Hip Hop, just giving my 2.5 cents on the Leandria Johnson rant. You can like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know, Let me know what you think. If you've seen the video, just let me know how, could she have said it better? Maybe. But She got the point across. So I'm with you, sister, and I just wish the best for you because you deserve it. All right. Well, until next time, take care.